67%. That is how many first-time SSDI applications get denied. More than 2 out of 3. And when you look at why, the same mistakes show up over and over again. Not obscure procedural failures, not impossible medical standards, the same entirely preventable errors committed by people who had no idea they were making them. This episode is about those mistakes, 7 of them, in order of how often they sink claims. If you are about to apply, you need to hear this before you submit anything. If you already applied and got denied, you need to understand which of these you ran into, because that shapes your entire appeal strategy. I'm Drew. This is Disability.co. Let's get into it. Mistake 1. Waiting too long to apply. SSDI is insurance. Like all insurance, your coverage has an expiration date. The SSA calls it your date last insured, or DLI. It's typically about 5 years after you stop working and stop accumulating work credits. After that date, you cannot win an SSDI claim, no matter how disabled you are, unless you can prove retroactively that you were disabled before the deadline. That is an extraordinarily hard standard to meet. The trap is that people wait until they've completely exhausted every other option. They've tried to push through. They've burned through savings. They've tried part-time work. And by the time they finally sit down to apply, their DLI is either dangerously close or already passed. The fix is simple in theory. Apply as soon as you become unable to work at substantial gainful activity levels. Don't wait for your condition to get worse. Don't wait until the money runs out. Don't wait until you feel like you've earned it. Apply. The system does not reward waiting. Mistake 2. Inconsistent or insufficient medical records. The SSA does not take your word for how sick you are. They evaluate your disability through your medical records. And one of the fastest ways to get denied is to have records that don't tell a consistent, clear story about your functional limitations. What this looks like in practice: you see your doctor every few months, you report your worst days, but on the day of the appointment you're having a decent day, so the notes say, "Patient appears stable," or "doing well." That note becomes part of your record. And when the SSA reviews it, what they see is someone who appears stable and doing well. The fix is to be explicit with your treating physicians about what is happening on your bad days, not your average days, your worst days. How long can you sit before the pain becomes unbearable? How far can you walk? How many hours can you concentrate? Can you lift a gallon of milk? These functional limitations need to be documented in writing, by your doctors, in your chart. If your records only say chronic back pain, moderate, and nothing about what that means for your ability to function, the SSA will fill in that gap with assumptions that do not favor you. Mistake 3. Not getting your treating physician to complete a residual functional capacity form. The RFC is the document where your doctor formally describes what you can and cannot do, how long you can stand, sit, walk, how much you can lift, whether you need to lie down during the day, whether your condition causes unpredictable flares that would cause you to miss work. The SSA has their own doctors who review your file, and if your treating physician hasn't provided a detailed RFC, those reviewers will fill in the blanks themselves. Their assessment is almost always less favorable than what your own doctor would say. Ask your doctor explicitly to complete a detailed RFC supporting your claim. Not every doctor is familiar with the SSA's specific format, which is part of the problem. A disability attorney can provide the correct form and coach you on how to have that conversation. But the core ask is simple. I am applying for SSDI. I need your written opinion on what I can and cannot do functionally. That document, filled out thoroughly by someone who has been treating you, is one of the most valuable things in your entire file. Mistake 4. Describing your best days on the SSA's function report instead of your worst. When the SSA sends you a function report, they're asking you to describe your daily activities, what you can do, how long you can do it, what your limitations are. And the very human instinct is to answer those questions based on a good day, because you don't want to seem like you're exaggerating. That instinct will hurt your claim. The SSA is asking about your functional limitations, and if you describe what you can do when everything is going right, they'll conclude your limitations aren't as severe as they need to be for a disability finding. Describe your worst days. If walking to the mailbox leaves you in bed for 2 hours recovering, write that down. If you can cook a simple meal but only if you sit down 3 times while doing it and then need to rest for the rest of the afternoon, write that down. I have trouble with daily activities tells them almost nothing. I can walk approximately 100 feet before needing to rest due to pain, and on my worst days I cannot leave my bedroom, tells them something they can actually use in your favor. Mistake 5. Missing deadlines on continuing disability reviews. This one affects people who have already been approved. The SSA periodically reviews whether you still meet the disability standard. They send paperwork. They ask for updated medical information. And a significant number of people lose their benefits not because they've recovered, but because they didn't respond to the paperwork in time. A CDR is not optional. If you don't respond, the SSA will suspend and then terminate your benefits, and you'll have to appeal just to get back to where you were. The rule is simple. Open every piece of mail from the SSA the day it arrives. Read it. If you don't understand it, call a disability attorney or your local SSA office immediately. The appeals window for most SSA actions is 60 days. Missing that window can mean starting the entire process over from scratch. Mistake 6. Going into the administrative law judge hearing without a representative. The ALJ hearing is where most SSDI cases are actually decided. It is a formal proceeding before a judge. The SSA has a vocational expert in the room whose job is to testify about what jobs they believe you can still perform, and the outcome depends enormously on how the case is presented. People who are represented at ALJ hearings win at significantly higher rates than people who represent themselves. Disability attorneys know how to challenge the vocational expert's testimony. They know how to frame your medical evidence. They know the specific legal arguments that move judges. And they work on contingency, meaning they only get paid if you win, and their fee is capped by federal law at 25% of your back pay, up to a maximum of $7,200. You do not pay anything out of pocket up front. The cost argument for going it alone does not hold up. Mistake 7. Giving up after the first denial. This is the most consequential one because it ends cases that would have won. 2/3 of initial applications are denied. That number sounds discouraging until you understand what it actually means. The SSA's first-level review process is not where most legitimate claims get approved. It is where most of them get screened out, to be sorted through on appeal. The denial is not a verdict, it is a step in a process. If you are denied, you have 60 days to file an appeal. Do not miss that window. The first level of appeal is reconsideration, which does not change outcomes much. But the second level, the ALJ hearing, is where the odds shift meaningfully. Roughly 45 to 50% of ALJ hearings result in approval. That is nearly a coin flip, at a stage that many people never reach because they gave up after the first denial. With good representation, those odds improve further. The people who win SSDI are overwhelmingly the people who stayed in the fight. Let's run through these one more time. Waiting too long to apply and missing your DLI deadline. Inconsistent or thin medical records that don't document your functional limitations. Not getting your treating physician to complete a detailed RFC. Describing your best days on the function report instead of your worst. Missing paperwork deadlines for continuing disability reviews. Going into the ALJ hearing without representation, and giving up after the first denial. Every single one of these mistakes is avoidable. None of them require a law degree. They require knowing the rules of the process you're in before you make them. If you haven't already watched Episode 1, SSDI versus SSI, That episode covers the eligibility framework underneath all of this. Understanding which program you actually qualify for and whether you're at risk of missing your DLI is step one before any of the rest of this matters.